I'm going to make it a little bit shorter, so to go around 30 minutes or so, and then stop, because just so I don't too many points that are being made. So I'll make it shorter. It's easier for me, honestly, if it's shorter. That way I can finish earlier. I can be done by after Maghrib. I don't have to stay here until 10:30. So it works for everybody, inshallah ta'ala. What I wanted to kind of share with you a little bit today, within the topic of self-honesty, is what the Prophet ﷺ and what the Quran, first of all, said about the concept of sidq and kadhib, because these are very, very well established ethics and values that we have in our deen. And it's important to kind of reflect on them now that you have learned a third or second dimension to honesty. Most of us, when we hear the word honesty, what we understand it, or what comes to mind, is telling people the truth, speaking to people truthfully. And that is correct, for sure. If you're truthful towards people, and that's a positive, and that's how the Prophet ﷺ was known. He was known to be a sadiq, right? Because someone who was honest, and people know honesty just based on what you tell them. But really, there's at least two or two other dimensions to honesty. There's the honesty that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the honesty you have with yourself. And these are equally important, if not, as far as many scholars are concerned, more important than the first one. Like it's your ability to be truthful towards yourself and truthful towards the Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala. That matters more than truthfulness towards people. But it's impossible for you to be truthful towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then lie to people. It's not going to happen. Right? You're not going to be truthful towards yourself and then waste your time lying to people. It doesn't work that way. Usually lying to people is just a symptom. It's just a symptom of someone living a lie for a long time, or accepting lies for a long time. So what did the Prophet ﷺ say? What did the Quran say about this topic? The Prophet ﷺ, in the authentic hadith that we all know well, when he would talk about the sidqa, يهدي إلى البر وإن البر يهدي إلى الجنة وإن الرجل لا يصدق ويتحرى الصدق حتى يكتب عند الله صديقا وإن الكذب يهدي إلى الفجور وإن الفجور يهدي إلى النار وإن الرجل لا يكذب ويتحرى الكذب حتى يكتب عند الله كذابا. So the Prophet ﷺ here, he explained that there are two ways to do things. Honesty will always lead to birr, meaning to the best of ethics, to piety, to virtuous behavior. Bir is one of the strongest words in Islam that describes virtuity. That's why with your parents it's birr al-walidain. And قُلْ لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. Ayah number 177 in Surah Al-Baqarah, the long verse, right? And then birr will take you to Jannah. It's your way to Jannah. And a person will be honest and will يتحرى الصدق, meaning he will be, التحري is detective work. التحري in Arabic, someone who's a tahari, that means he's a detective. So the act of tahari is the action of detection, meaning you are searching for opportunities to be honest. Meaning you're making sure that you're always honest in every scenario. And the Prophet ﷺ says a man will be honest and then search for honesty, for opportunities to be honest, and will detect honesty until he is written عند Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala صديقا. And the highest maqam, the highest status after nubuwwah, after prophecy, and above martyrdom, and above piety, is siddiqiyah, is to be a siddiq, which is why Sayyidina Abu Bakr is called that. And وَمَنْ يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. So to be a siddiq, is the highest or the closest thing you and I can ever be to prophecy. You can't be a prophet. What's the next best thing that you can be? You can be a siddiq. This is how the Quran sees the ranks of human beings. If you can't be a prophet, because prophecy is done by choice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we can't choose it. So what's the next thing, best thing that we can be, that we can choose to be, that we don't have to wait for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to choose us for it? It's going to be a siddiq. And obviously it comes from the same concept, which is being someone who is always on, who has a high degree of honesty. And it's not just honesty with people, as I pointed out, but rather the different types of honesty. And then the other part of the hadith, he says, and kadhib, lying, will lead to fujur. And fujur is basically wickedness, or lack of ethicality. And fujur will lead to nar, waliyadu billah. And then he says the human being will lie, وَيَتَحَرَّى الْكَذِبِ, and will look for opportunities to continue to lie until he is written عند Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala كذاب, someone who is a liar. This person this is what they do. They have no other way to go by things, they just lie about everything. And he's pointing out, alayhi salatu wasalam, two different lanes in life. Either you are someone who is honest and you are taking care of that honesty, you're a detective, you're always making sure that you are staying on that track of honesty, or you're not. And then with time, lies will engulf your way of life. Another hadith, narrated by Imam Ahmad and Abu Dawood and others with an authentic generation, the Prophet ﷺ would talk about the fact that the mu'min will fall into many different types of sin. The believer, the mu'min, so not the Muslim, the person who just accepted the deen, but the mu'min, someone who has now internalized the understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the relationship they have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They've internalized it. So they have raised their status with their closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be called a mu'min. That a mu'min will indeed, in fact, fall into sin. Like they will make mistakes for sure in their lives. And the Prophet ﷺ would give examples that they may perform this action or that action. But then when he was asked about al-kadhib, the mu'min could do everything, but he won't lie. Because if he lies, he can't really be a mu'min. Like these two, what he's trying to explain to us, these two are exclusive. Either this exists or that one. You can't have both. You can have other sins. Like a mu'min will sin because you're human, you'll sin. But lying is different. Lying is not a sin. Lying is a habit. Lying is either a way of life, just like honesty is. So either you're someone who is honest, and that will lead for you to have iman, or you are not. Because the moment you allow yourself to lie, it's a domino. You push the first one, it just keeps on going. Because lies will breed more and more lies. Which is why this whole exercise that I'm talking, this topic that I'm sharing with you, is taking long, and it's hard to untangle because we're at a point where we've already woven many threads of lies in our lives. It's been happening for years. And it's a lot of work to go back and unthread all of it and to figure out, okay, where did I start lying to myself? And how do I kind of get rid of all of that and start fresh, or at least acknowledge that all of this was one big lie, and I have to stop looking at things like that. When you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this topic, but from the other opposite direction, where He says, وَبَشِّرِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَنَّ لَهُمْ قَدَمَ صِدْقٍ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. And give the glad tidings to the believers that they have qadam sidq, meaning they have a stance of truthfulness with their Lord. Meaning it's a truthful relationship that they have with Him. And when He talks at the end of Surah Al-Qamar, talks about people going to Jannah, فِي مَقْعَدِ صِدْقٍ عِنْدَ مَلِيكٍ مُقْتَدِرٍ. They'll be in a station, in a seat of honesty and truthfulness with the King subhanahu wa ta'ala himself. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the Prophet ﷺ, or to speak, وَقُرْ رَبِّ أَدْخِلْنِي مُدْخَلَ صِدْقٍ وَأَخْرِجْنِي مُخْرَجَ صِدْقٍ وَاجْعَلْ لِي مِن لَّدُنْكَ سُلْطَانًا نَصِيرًا. Allow me to enter into this life an entrance that has honesty and truthfulness in it. And when I leave, I also leave with honesty and truthfulness. There's no debate amongst scholars of Islam that honesty, sidq, is the most important of all the ethics. There's no debate. Like they always, whenever they talk about the different ethics, sidq will always come first. My issue is really just to make sure that every time you hear this, or every time you talk about this, or every time you hear someone talking about it, that you remember that there are other dimensions to sidq that are, if not equally important, more important than the one that we were raised to think has the most effect on us, which is honesty with people around us. That is the end piece. That is the symptom. That's the result. Honesty with people is the result of a healthy relationship that you have with yourself and with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you are honest with yourself and you are truthful towards yourself. And without that piece, honesty with others is going to be a real problem. When I pointed out the importance of the piece of muraqabah and muhasabah, which are two tools that we use to keep that self-honesty in check, the way that you're going to learn to do this, the way that you're going to become someone who's honest with themselves, who's going to figure out where they told themselves lies and why they told themselves these lies, is by using muraqabah and muhasabah. And muraqabah is just the art of observation, and muhasabah is the accountability piece, the self-accountability. And the question that comes up a lot is like, how do I know if I'm being honest with myself versus I'm not being honest with myself? And that's a good question, because if this is the only example that we have where you don't really have an external source to offer you the feedback. What I asked you to do over the week is to ask someone for friendship. This is the best, ask how you are as a friend. This is the closest you'll ever get to getting some form of external feedback about yourself. When it comes to whether you are doing things right or wrong in life, there's no one who's going to offer it to you, because this is a very personal thing. Whether you are honest with yourself or not, whether you are making decisions for the right reasons or not, there's no one to offer you feedback, right? When you're working at work, there's going to be a supervisor, someone who's going to give you feedback. And if you don't take feedback, they'll fire you. Right? You have to be able to take feedback and tell you, okay, this is not happening appropriately. You're not showing up on time. These jokes aren't appropriate. You can't speak to people like this. You'll be told things, and you have to make adjustments to the way you live, adjustments to the way you speak, adjustments to the way you behave. So in life in general, everything, like, we're always receiving external feedback from our parents, from our peers, from our employers, etc., etc. But when it comes to this, there's no external feedback. This is you. You're the only one who knows if you are honest with yourself or not. You're the only one who can offer yourself that feedback. So the closest thing you'll get is to ask someone that you care about or cares about you what they think about you regarding a specific hat that you wear, right? Regarding a specific function that you have, one of the roles that you have as a friend. One of the roles that you have in life is a friend, being a friend. Well, how am I doing with that? And then getting feedback from someone about it and learning and then just comparing. Is that how I felt I was doing? If you receive a piece of feedback from someone who loves you, who's not out to get you and is not, they're not vindictive or malicious, and they offer you a piece of feedback, they tell you, well, you're this or you're that, or you don't seem to care as much, or you're quite self-centered whenever the problem comes up, or you're dismissive of my struggles, blah, blah, one of those words that are heavy. And then you're like, well, that's not how I... So now what I just offered you is an example. An example of how you perceived a reality in your life and what someone else is seeing it to be. Right? Now, they don't have to always be 100% correct. Right? The argument can be, well, why are they right? I'm not saying that they are right. But if they love you, and they're not saying this just to get back at you, this is how they actually feel, then you've at least failed to see how they are perceiving a relationship that involves the both of you. What you've received at this point, when you hear that, you've received real feedback of how they feel about something that involves the both of you, where you think it is of a certain nature. You think it's A, they're saying we feel it to be B. And if you've missed that, if you were capable of missing that, then imagine what else you've missed in life. That's the only point of this exercise, is just to kind of give you a glimpse of if I'm a friend with someone for a long time. This is a relationship that involves both of us. So friendship, based on how we understand it, should be beneficial for both of us. We should be both enjoying this. We should both feel supported. We should both feel loved and cared for, right? So I'm focusing on that, and I'm looking at, and then I ask them how is this friendship going, and they tell me something where you're dismissive. Well, that means my perception of this is very different than theirs, even though I thought that I was actually taking into account their perspective, like I was thinking about what they felt. And if I was able to miss that, then what else have I missed? Then there's a lot of other things I've missed as well. And it's just an eye-opener. That maybe you need to zoom out a little bit and just reevaluate and ask questions. Not every piece of feedback you will be offered will be correct. Not every piece of feedback that you'll be offered in your life will be correct. But not every piece of feedback you're going to be offered in life is going to be incorrect either. There are a lot of people who have chosen to live their lives in a way where whatever feedback they get from others is immediately swatted away. They carry the swatter in their hands. And there's nothing you can say. It's just whatever you say, they're just batting 1,000. Doesn't matter. You can say anything. Anyone can say anything about them. They ain't taking nothing. They have decided that everyone's opinion that is negative about them is wrong. The other people around them are wrong, and that they are the ones who are doing things correctly. And then there's people who are the opposite, who every piece of feedback is crushing. It crushes their souls, and it takes away from their ability to live. And really, self-honesty is learning to balance. To balance being critical of yourself and being confident as well. So really what self-honesty ends up being for you is a very effective and appropriate filtering system. It gives you just the right filtering system, where you are listening, the world is offering you feedback, the stuff that don't matter you're leaving out, and the stuff that actually has truth in them, you're taking them in, and then you're incorporating them into your life. and you're accepting it. It's like responding to the terrain, as I said at the beginning. You're holding on to you're driving on a straight path, the Sirat al-Mustaqim, your hands on the wheel. You have to kind of, these small little movements, it's a response to the terrain as it kind of presents itself to you. If you held your hand like this, you're going to be off even though it's a straight road, if you just hold still with no response to the terrain at all, you will be off the straight road 100%. You're going to fall off eventually. You have to respond a little bit. If you respond dramatically, if there's a small change in the terrain, then you can be off and if you never respond at all, make no difference, no movement, then you're going to fall off the road as well. So the only way to stay on this straight road is you have to hold your hand steady with a little bit of response. The terrain kind of gives you a bit of a nudge here and there, and you learn. But you've learned to filter that out. When you drive, you've learned to filter out how much response you need to give and how much when you receive things. In life, it's the same thing. But you can't do it correctly if you don't have a good baseline, if you have not leveled with yourself, if you haven't sat down and said, what are we doing here? How good are we at this, and how bad are we at that? And how much have we actually done? And how close are we? How far away are we? And you ask those questions. And the good thing about you, is as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرَةٌ وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرَهُ. He says subhanahu wa ta'ala, indeed, the human being, for sure, عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرَةٌ, has insight on himself. Basira is not eyesight, that's basar. Basira is insight. Is your ability to have, and the human being has the ability to have crystal clear insight upon themselves if they want to. وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرَ, even if the human being gives excuses. I told you, there's a difference between reasons and excuses. Excuses are just ways for us to allow ourselves to justify, to rationalize what we're doing. Reasons are to help ourselves understand why we did it, but then also to go back and take the amount of accountability and blame that lies upon ourselves and work with it, and also remove these reasons, or actually start substituting these reasons. And there's a difference between the two. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Qiyamah, He says this very, very clearly, that the human being knows what he's doing. The human being has insight upon themselves. We just choose to dull that sense a little bit. It's a sense that you have. It's the sixth sense, if you want to be. It's the sixth sense that we all talk about. We know whether we're doing, whether this is right or wrong. There's a part of us that knows it, which is why polygraphs work. They work because we know. There's a part of us that just knows whether we're saying what is truthful or not. But sometimes people actually go and do these graphs, and they're surprised to find out that they were lying about it. Like they have been lying about something for so long that now they don't even realize that they were lying about it, but their body still knows that they're lying about it. So you have, the hints are still there. You still feel uncomfortable about things. There's still a voice inside saying, no. Why? Why are you still saying, why are you still committing to this narrative? You're still telling yourself this story. Come on. Like, when are you going to stop telling yourself this story? You know it's full of, it's not. And who are you trying to convince? People? Who cares if they believe it or not? Yourself. You're trying to convince yourself so that you can sleep at night well. So you don't have to worry about the fact that this is something that you did, or this is why you did it, or this is the reality of this relationship. The problem with all of this, brothers and sisters, the problem with it is that when you come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawm al-qiyamah, you can't convince Him of it. You won't win that argument. And once He backtracks for you in your life, when the lie began, and shows you how many times you made that lie until you believed it, at that point it'll be clear, I'm just asking you to do it now, so that you don't have to come that way yawm al-qiyamah. And even if you end up not being able to level with the world around you, knowing that that's the truth, just knowing that's the truth, will grant you a certain degree of humbleness and a certain degree of forgiveness seeking in your behavior that will be critical for your survival on the Day of Judgment. Because you come to Allah, I know, I'm not lying to you, I know I was full of it for a long time. And I fooled a lot of people, I know, and I shouldn't have done it, and I have no excuse, and I'm just here hoping that I find your mercy, Ya Rabb. And you may not, but at least you're in the right mindset. This is the closest you'll get. This is the closest you'll get. If you come with the lies, confounded one upon the other, then there's no hope at all. And then, because that's when the discussion starts to begin. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks you about your life, and you start explaining, see, the problem what I'm talking to you about, and forgive me, it's usually not a problem when you're 20. Because it's a problem when you're 60. This specific part of Tazkiyah, I usually don't start with it. I start with self-value and mortality for always. Because this one is usually not a problem of the young age. Because it's not too hard for a young person to kind of take off the masks that they've wielded at home to wear in front of themselves in the mirror. Like it's not quickly. They can do it quick because it's only been a couple of years that they've been doing this, so it's still fresh. It's when you're 60, and you have told yourself narratives for so long that it's almost impossible for you to. You will run into a lot of people like that, where you'll sit with them and they'll tell you their encounter, how they remember their lives and what they did. And you'll just listen. You won't even waste your time arguing. You'll know the truth, and you won't say a word because it's not worth it. Because there's no point. They're not gonna understand it any other way. You can't convince them of anything. This is long gone. This ship sailed long time ago. So we'll just sit there and listen to these stories that make no sense, that we know are untrue. But if they want to believe it, they can go ahead and do it. You have people like that in your life all the time. It's part of getting older, honestly. So what I'm telling you to do now is to save you from a moment later on in your life. That's why it's more difficult for people to change their religion when they're old. Right? Islam happens like when people convert, they convert when they're young, not when they're old. When they're old, it's hard because when they're old, you've already moved so many lies together. It's impossible to get out of the web that you've made for yourself. To change your religion requires a radical reassessment and an acknowledgement that everything that you were doing before is wrong. That's a big deal. I want you to think about this because this is important. For someone to accept Islam, what it requires of them is to be honest with themselves by saying that everything I've been doing in my life, the reasoning behind it, the idea was wrong. It's wrong. I've made huge mistakes for a long time. That is a very high degree of self-honesty. But we can't require from people or expect from others to make that assessment for themselves, to accept Islam, and then you and I not live that truth all the time. You and I have to live that truth as well. Because in order for someone non-Muslim to accept Islam, they have to be self-honest. Have to sit with themselves, have to level with themselves. Do I actually believe in the faith that I am following? Does this actually make sense? Do I actually care about any of this? And if they answer that sincerely and honestly, then they'll come to conclusions, and that will open the door for them to make decisions. If we expect it from others, then we have to also expect it from ourselves. This is what made Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam special. This is what made him special as a person. He was honest with himself. He didn't lie to himself ever. At the age of 40, he had come, someone who, I want you to think about this. Imagine at the age of 40, who grew up with no father, never saw his father because his father died before he was born, buried his mother at 6, lived in a household where he was just a number. Just a number. He had to work at age 8. He did not get the childhood that all of his cousins and peers got. He didn't get it. He had to work from a young age. He spent all of his life working. He spent all of his young years taking care of people around him. His buddies who accepted Islam were all the poorer people. It was Ammar ibn Yasir and Bilal al-Habashi and Suhaib, the guys who didn't have anything. The guys who didn't have big families, they were not from noble blood. They didn't travel everywhere and go see the world. They were just people who barely got along, people who needed help, like Abdullah ibn Maktoum, the blind man. These people who accepted Islam because they knew him alayhi salam beforehand. Because he took care of them. As Khadija told him when he came down, he was shaking. She told him, يعني تحمل الكل وتغيث الملهوف وتعين على نوائب الحق وتكسب المعدوم. She starts counting for him. You go look for the poor person to give him money. You find this person who cannot take care of himself, and you take care of them. You help anyone who's in distress or difficulty. You sit with them, you support them until they get through it. This is what she's counting. This is what she observed of her husband. This is what he lived his life for 40 years. And then at the age of 38, he decided that there was something missing. There was something missing in his life. So missing to the degree that where he would go and sit in a cave for weeks on end to just stare into the abyss, to stare into this into the cosmos ahead of it, in front of him, just to figure out what it was that was missing in his life. Who does that? See, no one does that. No one does that except someone who is living their own truth, a certain degree of truth, where they are not willing to live empty, where things don't make sense, where if there's a missing piece, they're not going to act like it's not missing. They're not going to just cover it up with garbage and keep on going and just act like and just make it look pretty so that they can show it off. No, it's something missing. You have a family. I understand, but there's a part of my soul that's not there. So he sat and he needed to figure it out, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is the degree of honesty this man had with himself. It was honesty with himself before anything else. Which is why, alayhi salatu wasalam, didn't matter whether it was at the beginning of his da'wah when he was unsupported, he had no support, he had no wealth, or was at the end of his da'wah when he was the governor, the chief commander, the leader of Arabia. There's no difference in this man. He does it with such grace that we don't even notice it. This is the real problem of his character, alayhi salatu for us, is that he did it with such grace that we don't notice it. We don't notice that the 35, 40-year-old version of this man and the 62-year-old version of this man was the same thing. At the bottom of the hill or on top of the mountain, nothing changed. Why? In order for you to be able to live that way, then you have to have leveled with yourself a long time before, where no one can lie to you. Where people come and say that you're a liar and you're making things up and you're ruining our civilization, you're ruining your rahim, and you're ruining this city, and you're the worst things ever happened to Arabia, and you should be killed and you should be removed. He stands there, alayhi salatu wasalam, he's fine. And when they come later on and they kiss his feet and his hands and they don't let his wudu make it to the ground because they take it and they wipe their faces with it, and it doesn't make a difference either. You understand what that requires? He lived both lives, alayhi salatu wasalam. Both lives he went through. And nothing fazed him. Why? Because he's not learning. Nothing people are saying to him is he learning anything from. He already knows the reality of the indoors. He built it. He knows every brick. There's nothing that you can tell him about himself that he doesn't already know. I am inviting you, within this topic, to start walking down that path. It's not going to happen within a day or two or even more. It's going to take a while. And you will improve as you go along. It will turn into a lifestyle. Because it's really not an achievement. It's really not an achievement. Self-honesty is not an achievement. It's not something you do and then you're done. It's a way of life. It's where you are someone who is constantly being critical of yourself. You're asking, did I do this for the right reason? That critical part is balanced by the confidence of what you know is true. And you're able to balance things out. And you're receiving that feedback from the world. You're filtering it out, I think what I was told, and I've shared this a few times in the past. What I was first told, when I first doing, I had a number of shuyukh in my life, sometimes at the same time in different places. And when I decided that I liked doing public speak, I like to speak, I like to talk. He told me to start with kids, so I did. And that's where I spent maybe 10 years, just speaking to children. Children are amazing. Children have no filters. They don't care. Children will make it very clear whether you are interesting or not. They won't sugarcoat any of it. If you're not interesting, they'll just start talking to each other and playing around, and they'll maybe mock you and make fun of you and ask you something completely unrelated. And if you're interested, they'll be totally focused. So it's a very natural feedback system if you're actually working with children. So I started doing this, and it was a disaster at the beginning. And one of my sheikh told me, he told me is that you have to make sure that every piece of feedback you're given for the first 15 years of doing this, you take something from it for yourself. Take something from it. Meaning there's always going to be something true in it. Not everything you're going to be told is true, but find something in it. Don't ever ignore a piece of feedback. If you do that, then you'll be fine. You can just keep on going. The first piece of feedback I got was from another sheikh who told me that I should find something else to do with my life. I should go focus on academics or writing things. I shouldn't be talking. There's no point. He said, you're like a machine gun. There's no point. No one's going to listen to you. So, but I'd heard the first piece of advice first, so I had that with me. All right, there's something there. I'm too fast. All right, so let's do. And every time, and since that day, every time I go talk somewhere, someone will come up. It's only going to be somebody who has to give you some piece of, usually it's a whole, it's a load of, whatever. It's a whole load of garbage. There's nothing. But within it, there's always something. So self-honesty is just your ability to say, okay, yeah, I get it. I don't. Figuring out amongst what's being said, what is actually helpful. There's always something helpful. Let's say someone came and they're arguing literally against what, they are objecting to the thing that I spoke about that I was trying to change in them. So, but still, within the way that they object to it, I learned something. I could say, well, maybe the way I presented it could have been a little bit different. And maybe had I presented it a little bit different, maybe I said this at the beginning, it would have eased the person's It would have made it easier for them to hear it, right? Okay, well, that's a small change. You can get very self. You can decide that no, I did everything right. This small mistake is not worthy. But no. Self-honesty is really the pursuit of all the improvements that you can make. It's the acknowledgement that I'm not even remotely close to being perfect at what I do. Not even remotely close. Not even the vicinity of that. Mediocrity is the best we can hope for, at least at the beginning. And just getting these little pieces of feedback are helping us improve a little bit. One step forward. Yes, there's a lot of maybe garbage in what you heard, but there's something there. Take that something, add it to your repertoire. Help you become better. And if you do that in your work, at school, with your relationships, with people around you, then you will within a year or two, you'll see that you will improve. The people around you won't. People who aren't willing to actually take that feedback, put themselves in an embarrassing, difficult situation, and then being told that wasn't done properly, and then learn. These are the ones who grow. You only grow from friction, right? You only grow from moments where there's friction. You only grow when you're working with a supervisor who's tough on you. When you're in a situation where it was tiring and difficult, that's when you grow. Everything else is just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It's the days that are difficult. It's the moments that are stressful that allow you to become a better person. When you were a kid, you attended a class and the teacher would ask for a volunteer. You never wanted to put your hand up. But whoever put their hand up that learned something that day, who gained perspective, who gained an experience, who did something wrong but learned from it. These are people who grow. And it's the same thing for us. Self-honesty is just that ability to allow yourself to be vulnerable, accept the reality that maybe I'm not doing things appropriately or correctly, and then use that to become better. You are, by nature, as a human being, you're critical. You're very critical. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created you with that ability of watching, observing, and criticizing things. That power that you possess, that critical eye that you have, is going to be used. You are going to decide on whom you're going to use it. Are you going to use it on others, or are you going to use it on yourself? My advice to you is that you use it on yourself, because the only thing that you can influence and change and improve is yourself. Other people, they don't want your criticism. They're not asking for it, and they're probably going to be bothered by it. But we are very good at that. Right? We're extremely good. I know that you are capable of putting all 10 of your friends and family members and breaking down all of their problems with no preparation needed. You do not require any prep for this meeting. You can do it right now if they're willing to sit down and listen to you and take take your divine wisdom that you have, mashallah. You know all of, and you can sit down and explain to them why their lives are. I know you have friends who are saying, "Oh, my life is like this, and this is why." And you're like inside of yourself, "Nope, that's not why. I know why. You don't seem to know why." But I want you to know that people feel the same way about you. People feel the exact same way about you, unless you're capable of doing what I'm requesting. What the Prophet ﷺ did, which he never really complained about anything. I actually want you to go and look this up. Find for me where the Prophet ﷺ complained about other things, where he complained about other people, or he blamed something or someone else for anything that was happening in his life. And if he couldn't do it, then who could? He lived a really hard life. His life was very difficult, alayhi salatu wasalam. He lost all of his loved ones within his life, all of them. If someone loses a child or a family member, it scars them for a couple of years. Alayhi salatu wasalam lost both parents, both grandparents, his wife and his 3 of his 4 daughters and 3 of his 3 sons. His adopted son, 4 of his uncles actually, and 3 of his aunts, and 5 of his friends. When you count them together, and maybe 2 of his grandchildren, there's around 19 deaths that are directly related to him, alayhi salam. Not like second. You always hear about a great grandfather or a second. No, these are people who lived with him, who he loved very much, who he mourned, alayhi salatu wasalam. But he never did. And he lived a life where he was extremely simplistic. We all know the story of when he was lying down on the hasir. He was upset with one of his wives. He was upset. And he was just upset from other stuff. And he was alone. And Umar ibn Khattab was worried that the Prophet ﷺ had divorced one of his wives. And he didn't want to ask directly. So it's a long story. It's a really nice story. But when he came up to where the Prophet ﷺ was staying, he was staying in a aliyah. It's like a tree house of some sort. And he came up there and he found the Prophet, and it's like a treehouse where people would put their muni, where they preserved their preservatives for the winter. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he looked up, all he saw was maybe two containers. One of them was empty, the other one was half there. Like there's really nothing. It was still the summer, and there's nothing in them. And he was lying on the hasil. He got up, and the hasil was all it was a poke, the checkers all on his side, and it was just a. Now Umar just felt, and this was towards the end of his life, and he just got. For a moment he said, how long are we going to stay like this? How long are you going to live like this, and we're going to live like this? Until when are we going to be poor like this? And Qaisar and Kisra are literally swimming in their wealth and swimming in their... And the Prophet ﷺ ripped into him. Just, أَفِي هَذَا يَبْنَ الْخَطَّابِ? He didn't call him by his name, he called him by the father's name. That's how you know he's angry with you. ﷺ would drop your name. أَفِي هَذَا يَبْنَ الْخَطَّابِ? This is what you're concerned about. You're concerned about where's the food and where's the... This is what you're concerned about. And then he went on, he started to talk to him. And why is this? Because it's just a different way of seeing things. It's his ability, alayhi salatu wasalam, to stay focused on what matters and not to get distracted by the variations that exist within life. No matter what happens, staying the same person, staying with the same focus, knowing exactly what it is that you want to do. Not complaining about anything, not seeing fault in things around you, but rather seeing your responsibility and what you need to do. Islam doesn't work any other way. Islam doesn't work the moment in your life you're not capable of holding yourself accountable for your part of it is the moment that which is why we are where we are. Because in any given situation, it's either your fault or qada and qadr, right? There's no third. It's either you or qada and qadr. Could it be other people? For sure. You can't control that. You can't control what other people decide to do. But in your given situation, either it's qada and qadr, or you carry a certain degree of responsibility. Either you did some of this, this was your doing, or it's qada and qadr. Qada and qadr is just a very respectful and appropriate way of saying it's God's fault. Jalla Jalalullah. That's what it means. Qada and qadr is saying is blaming the divine for anything. So you have to ask yourself in any given situation, who do you feel is accountable for where you are? Who you feel should be taking responsibility for where you are? The concept of tasbih that you have in your deen is literally saying that I don't blame the divine. I don't turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in objection and say, why did you do this? And why didn't you do that? And why did you choose this for me? Couldn't you have done that for me? And how easy would it have been had you just made this for me? We don't do that. We don't do that. So what's left really is finding out where our contribution came in. And sometimes there isn't. It's very rare. It's very rare, but sometimes there isn't. There's nothing if someone gets ill, a genetic illness. They had nothing, they did nothing to it. And that's understandable. Now they're accountable for how they respond to it. But in most other situations, there's some degree of accountability, responsibility that falls on us. And what this exercise, or what this concept of self-honesty is here for, is to make sure that you never lose sight of it. Is that you never allow yourself to be in a position where you no longer see it or recognize it. The last piece, and I'll end at 45 inshallah, that I want to share with you. When I talk to you about, and this is one of the exercises that I offered or asked you to do, when I talk to you about sitting with yourself and removing all of the roles and all of the hats and all of the different functions that you carry within your life, searching for the bareness of your consciousness, just who you are, at the raw level of being a human being or creation. And it takes a little bit of time because it's hard for us to remove that programming, removing that, even removing the aspect, even removing the things that you feel are very much defining you in terms of your roles, whether it's the services that you're offering to the people around you, being a spouse, being a Muslim, just removing all of that. And what's left is just this raw consciousness. This raw consciousness, if you understand what it is, if you're able to comprehend what it means to be abd and the beauty of ubudiyah, then you end up being able to feel at harmony or in synchrony with the world around you. And you start appreciating the little things in life, the simple things, which a lot of us lose over time. The reason that there are addictions in this world and is because people start finding it difficult to find joy. So they need to do more things. So it's not enough. I was on the beach the other day, just talking to a friend. Look, my 4-year-old was just standing there, picking up sand and just walking it into the water for like 30 minutes, speaking to himself, just happy as can be. Just the happiest little creature on the planet, requiring nothing more than just a little bit of sand, a little bit of water, happy. That's still you. Somewhere under the rubble, under all of what you've added on for the last whatever years, it's still you. You're still, that person is still there. That person is important. That's because that's your natural, that's your natural existence. You need to bring that person back. That's the person who needs to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what the Quran says. That's what the Quran is always telling you to do. Go, look at the sun, look at the moon, look at the mountains, look at the rivers. And then again, look at the water coming down and the green coming up. And then it goes. Why is the Quran time and time again? You have to ask yourself this question time and time, like over 50 times in the Quran. Just keep on pointing you towards just simple things, just the phenomena that we observe all the time. Why is that? Because you're supposed to be able to enjoy these things. These are beautiful things to enjoy. Why aren't you enjoying them? Why do we need to drink and do drugs and go on expensive trips and go to this place and spend this amount of money and buy all this stuff just to be happy? You don't need any of it. The reason that we need all this is because we've lost touch with who we actually are. Like we don't know who we are anymore. If you're able to remove all of this away from yourself and just enjoy your consciousness in its raw form, and be at one with the universe around you, be a part of the soil of the earth. Just be a part of this universe that you're in, understanding that you came from it and go back to it with the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then you can enjoy the little things, the simple stuff. And you can find happiness, true happiness within all of it. And you will find the meaning of feeling loved. See, you can't actually enjoy love without that. Love that requires all of these accessories isn't real. Love that requires all of these accessories to exist, it fades away after a while. Like it dies off with time. Raw love is different. It's something that just exists. It just exists. As long as you exist, it exists. And even if you don't exist anymore, it'll still exist. But you can't experience that if you don't know who that person is. If that person is now, if the masks that we wear fuse with the face, then this becomes a very difficult topic, and people get bored of listening to it. Because you have to actually, to peel off the different masks that we have worn, to see who's left a real person, it's painful. It's not a fun thing to do. And I ask you that, I understand it takes time, but do this anyways. Even though it may take time, even though it may be painful, even though it may not be comfortable, slowly learn to do it. So that no one can ever tell you about you something that you don't already know. No one can surprise you with a piece of information, positive or negative. And that whatever they do tell you about you is just a piece of feedback that you will weigh out and see what you can do with. There's some room for me to use this to improve. Is there something, am I acting in a way that maybe is not expressing my true values or beliefs? Or do I actually have an issue that I need to revise? And when you do that, you'll stay fresh, you'll stay on the terrain, you'll stay on that straight path. I'm going to end with that, inshallah ta'ala. There's maybe one or two points that I'm going to conclude with next week, and that'll take us maybe 2.5 months into this topic, and I'll kind of end with, so next week will be the last kind of session on this topic. Not that there's nothing left to say about it, but really, I'm trying to read the room, and I think people are getting bored of listening to it, so I think we can move on and maybe come back to it a little bit later. I have to talk about muraqabah and muhasabah next week in a little bit more depth. We have to go, because these are the tools that you're going to use, really. It's not worth kind of sharing all these concepts and mental acrobatics if you're not going to have some tools in your pocket to use to actually stick with this. And the concept of muraqabah, which is self-observation, and muhasabah, which is self-accountability, is what you're going to use to make sure that you always bring yourself back. And if you start going astray, or if you start making things up, you're able to kind of level with yourself and then hold yourself accountable in this life before you're held accountable on the Day of Judgment. I'll end with that, inshallah ta'ala. If there's any questions or comments directly from, I'll take. Otherwise, the brothers we can go up into the younger brothers can go up to the room, and I'll come for some follow-up, and then the sisters will have their follow-up, inshallah ta'ala, after Maghrib, bidhnillah ta'ala. And that way we'll be done at around 9:30. But if there are any questions or comments now, you're welcome to make them. Otherwise, we'll wrap it up. Excellent. Jazakumullah khair. This tells me that no one's listening to anything I'm saying. Jazakumullah khair. Subhanakallah bihamdik. La ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in.